Have you
It's
two
just
met before?
I
Nope,
don't know if we have.
Well, so Arnie, meet
we have
Mike.
not.
Mike, meet Arnie.
Hey,
I've
Arnie, how you
had the
doing?
pleasure of working with both of you.
Who do you
Hey,
find
Mike,
better of the two of us? Who wins?
Clearly,
it's a valid
Disney is the
question.
greatest of them all.
Disney is the
Uh,
greatest of them all. Okay, fair
yeah,
play. I like that.
well, Arnie has you substantially beat by volume.
I'm gonna record this. In terms of projects, yeah, fair play. I'm not a
Yeah,
repeat customer, unfortunately. Although
we've
I
just
should be one day.
shipped.
One day.
We've just shipped. Well, you do you, man. You know my number. You're like a one and a halfer because of your audio. Uh,
I was
the
just talking to
audio
someone about that North Star Rising. Yeah, I was
North
talking to
Star
someone
Rising.
about
I
that
was
the other
blanking
day.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
Are we going to do introduction? Like Mike, I actually thought you were part of the podcast team here or something. What? Let's do
we
some
are
introductions.
co-hosts
We're co-hosts. I'm as important as Austin in many ways.
in most ways, far more important.
I'm
Okay.
He's higher
so
on the food chain.
I'm indie game director, Arnie.
Oh, cool.
Arnie, did you ever play Thomas Was Alone?
No, I didn't.
Don't put him on the spot like that. That's not fair. I've made a bunch of pretentious little
No,
games, and now I make pretentious games for the Walt Disney Company. That's
He's
my.
working on Tron
Mike, I,
games
I
these
don't
days,
I don't
but
play any games. I don't play the big
I don't
ones. I
play
don't play the
enough either. To
small
be
ones. I
fair,
don't play. If
I'm always
somebody's like,
caught out.
"Hey, because we're doing a bunch of pitches right now, you need to know about this," and I'm like, "YouTube."
Thomas
I'm
Was
playing
Alone
some,
was what
but not much.
that time frame in which the Banner Saga was also a beneficiary. There was that window where indie games made by comparatively small teams really seemed to dominate a lot of the conversation. You know, that was
It
the
was
era of
cool.
Golden
like
time.
Super Meat
It
Boy
was
and Binding of
a great
Isaac
time.
and uh, you know
Fez, all of it.
Fez. Yeah, great example. Like there were a bunch. Thomas Was Alone. I think of as being very much of that era and of that generation.
I
And
don't think I'd have gotten away with it in the other era. So I think you're absolutely right.
Oh,
well, we're
we got
all
lucky
chasing
too.
that high in so many respects of that of that window. It seems
Hmm.
it was such a it was a great it was a great period. I often people much the same way that Journey was always weird because I never was fully comfortable calling Journey an indie. I was like, Thomas Was Alone is a proper indie, or Monaco around that same time. That's a real indie. Banner Saga was a real indie. Journey, it always felt unfair to lump it in with those when it's Sony owned. We
Yeah,
had
I
the full
guess.
benefit, like all the sound was mixed in Sony's mixing facilities. Sony's in-house sound designers did all the sound in Journey. You know, like
I feel like Journey was the start of the whole kind of debate about is indie a genre or a production methodology, right? Like, because Journey is, by any definition, was not on a business level indie game, but on like a vibe and approach and
right.
creative focus, it 100% was, right? It's a genre. I remember my mum when I first started making indie stuff, my mum saying to me, because she knew the term only from like music, she was like, you're not indie, you're not cool. And it was this weird moment of like, I feel like I've been chasing that same feeling for like 15 years now.
That
Like, where
feels
it's
like
like
that story is more of a let's unpack the relationship.
the relationship between me and my mother.
Yeah.
There's no time on this show. Are we in the show right now? Is this part of it?
I
Are
mean,
we gonna put this out?
that's up to the editors, I think, but I
Hmm.
think so. I'm recording. But in any case, yeah, to me, I remember at the time, Journey was like, it was like an indie Rorschach test. Whatever camp you identified in, Journey was the opposite. So, like,
Hmm.
when I talked to my friend Gerard Marino, who was the composer on the first three God of War games, to him, Journey was an indie. But then when I
Hmm.
would talk to, like Andy Schatz, who's making Monaco out of his garage, we
Hmm.
were maybe not AAA, but we were not indie. Uh, and so yeah, it was always kind of like whatever you are, we're the other. It was
But
like
that's
this.
kind of why they came up. People started throwing around your triple I or double
Yeah.
A, or
Right.
like you have to add something between those two. To me, Journey wasn't pure indie. It wasn't pure triple A. It was somewhere a little bit in between, I think.
Hmm.
It definitely didn't have the budget. I think Journey's budget was on the $7 million range. Like
Oh,
that's
that's nothing. Yeah, I mean, most indie games are made for at least 10 million, right, Austin?
well, that's the thing.
How much could it cost the meme from
It,
what's
Banner
that
Saga
from?
was
Yeah.
Banner Saga was two.
Thomas Was
Yeah.
Alone was 5 sandwiches and a bag of crisps. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's my point. Like
I love
AAA.
indie. I love indie. Like I could
Mm.
stay indie, but the amount of work that goes into it and the how many years can you crunch is the question before you go, okay, hold on, we need more help. You know, like I can't keep this up. That's
Does
what it
that
was.
mean that given Stoic's, at least in the case of Towerborn, relationship with Xbox, does that mean that you don't see Stoic as an indie studio right now in that regard?
I personally don't see Stoic as an indie studio with Towerborn.
Right.
As a studio, we still are indie.
I
Towerborn
mean,
is
you're
a
not owned
game.
by Microsoft, obviously, so
We're not owned by Microsoft, no. So as a studio, we're still independent. However, the decisions that were made on Towerborn and the support that we have from Xbox, very different vibe than Thomas Was Alone. You know,
for sure.
so no,
Yeah.
I don't think of Towerborn as an indie game right now.
Yeah.
Stoic as a studio still, absolutely, because who knows what we do next? You know,
I know what you
Right.
mean, though. It's the same with us, like working now with Disney. Is like I
Yeah.
can't walk into a room with a bunch of indies and call myself someone who's working on indie games while
Right.
doing my play testing at Disney World. That's not how any of this works. That's not. You're
But as a
outside of that
studio,
box. I like
as
the
a
idea of splitting the studio. That's a nice way of kind of
yeah,
compartmentalizing that. I like that.
as a studio, Mike, are you guys? You're still independent?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. You're an indie studio, but you're doing
Yeah, no,
a
I've
game
never
with
thought
a
about that
bigger
distinction
publisher.
between. Yeah. I've not thought about it like splitting the
Yeah.
game from the studio in that way. I like that. That's a
Well,
nice line to draw.
I don't know what you guys plan on doing in the future, but you easily could go back to an
Oh, yeah.
indie game next, you know, and I think
Yeah.
that's cool. That's the right place for me to be right now.
It's
Yeah, it's
interesting
good to
though
have friends.
how the mindset or the kind of like aesthetic being a thing though, because I do feel like your Tron games, particularly the first one, but honestly, all of it is still very indie
You mean
flavored.
cheap? Are you saying cheap?
It's
Is that
very
what you mean?
cheap, yes.
Yeah.
And no, you know what I mean? Like you're
There's a
not
vibe.
trying,
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, they're
you're not
not
trying to
coming to me to
compete
make
with like,
something.
yeah, you're not
Yeah.
doing a Call of Duty in Tron and
Yeah,
IP.
that's fair. That's fair.
And because that's what I think is cool. I actually really love that there's space for big IPs and big publishers to partner with studios to make like, I mean, John Wick Hex, that was one of the things that was so cool about that game also is huge IP. But
Weird fucking game.
but it's not it's like it's super not the expected John Wick game.
It's been really interesting when they do. I have no inside information on this to be clear, but I think it's been reported on that there's plans to do this. It's gonna be so weird when there is like the AAA John Wick game to have like compare that to is gonna be very interesting.
Isn't it weird that there hasn't been till now? Doesn't it seem like would have been a super obvious move?
Well, it's an interesting IP. Like John Wick was really interesting. Like talking to the people behind that, because John Wick was an indie film. Like they made that movie without funding. They made that movie. That first movie was made fully independently, and then they shopped it around because no one would back it because of what happens 10 minutes into the movie. Every film studio said you can't do that in a movie and kick them out of the offices. So they made the entire film and then sold the final film. So it was truly an indie film. And I think, to be honest, that's kind of how they think of it still, as like this experimental, very financially successful indie. It's almost like kind of how like, I don't know, like a Blumhouse would look at a horror movie. It's kind of, if you look at like what it costs to make a John Wick movie, it's still in that realm of being quite cheap. I mean, obviously they've scaled up as they've gone on, but it doesn't surprise me because I think their sensibility is they wanted to make weird stuff, which is why they talked to me, right? That's why we ended up doing what we did with them. So yeah, I think that's baked in for them.
I know that Alana is going to be joining us theoretically at any moment. I was sort of intentionally avoiding, letting. I would love for you to share your road into all this, Arnie. But because time is not infinite, then she's just going to have to miss out. So, yeah, obviously our paths crossed during the Kickstarter for the Banner Saga 1. But you obviously had a whole career adventure prior to that point. You want to just give us the road?
I'll give the very high end intro.
Yeah, exactly. The high altitude or whatever, obviously we do this super casual, but
you can make it very narratively rewarding and exciting for us. That'd be great.
That's true. That would be
we can have like a beginning, middle, and an ending.
We'll see what we can do about that. I went to 1 year of college before realizing that's not my thing. So I went to a school of cartooning. right? Which probably made my Marine Corps father a little bit concerned. But I literally went to school for cartooning, and then I got out of there, and I did a very short stint um, with oh geez, what the hell? With Rolling Stone magazine, and I went from there into DC Comics, I did comics for years, and then I got the opportunity. I eventually was doing JLA for DC, which was to me like, oh, I'm going to work. I don't know if you know anything about this, Mike, but the way comics work is it's pure, like it's competition the whole time. Some people talk about art, right? Now, geez, now here I go. Some people talk about art like, oh, it's relaxing. It must be fun. You're an artist. No, I went to a cartoonist school that was teaching us how to get a job. Then you go into comic books, and all you're trying to do is climb the ladder to the top #1 comic, because that's where you make the money, and you're competing against them, all the other.
I assume it's also quite like numerical in like how many pages can you do a day? How many?
Oh,
How
absolutely,
competitive do you need to be in order to get to that point? I assume
absolutely. You
it's
had to
very
do.
industrial in that way. I
It's a
see.
totally industrial thing, and you had to beat out the other people. And the #1 thing is never miss a deadline ever, right? So
Sure.
I would turn in crap page after crap page if I had to hit that deadline, and that's why editors loved me eventually. But yeah, it was totally like that. And you had to do 6 pages a week, every single week. There's always a Christmas issue. There's always a Easter issue. If you're sick that day, you better be really sick because you're not getting paid. You get paid per page. It's all year, every day. Anyway, I did that for a while, and then I finally got
On
to
that,
JLA.
but as a quick parenthesis on that, because my understanding about comic art is that also is kind of subdivided. Like, aren't there there's like line people separate from color people, and obviously
Right.
neither has anything
And
to
there's
do
like
with the writing.
subcontracting, right? Like you might subcontract like a colorist will subcontract someone to help them with what's it called, the block colors. Like they'll subcontract someone just to do the fill
So
vectors for them, and then
that's right. Somebody do the lassoing, the
that's
selections.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, colorists could do that. They go off on a whole thing there. But I did the penciling. So yeah,
Right.
penciler, inker, writer, colorist, and then you have a bullpen. If they want to change something real quick, they'll redraw your head, and it was always horrible. But yeah, there's a whole
Right.
suite of people that are
So
needed
you were,
there.
yeah, it makes sense. I should have been able to guess that you were a, one of the line people. You were a
I was the
pencilist.
one drawing the thing right
Yeah.
before somebody else inked over me.
So you're at the start of that process. Ultimately, you're
Well,
kind of
the
one of
writer is the
the.
start,
Of
but
course,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
But in terms of the art, you're the yeah.
that's right. And I would do all the drawing. And I actually, after a while, the inker lived in an art studio with me. We had like a big house in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, and I lived with the inker, another couple comic artists. It was like
I'm
an
imagining
art
chasing Amy. Basically, I'm imagining the back-to-back drawing
pretty
boards. The whole
pretty
thing.
damn close.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
all in one
Okay.
big room. It was pretty cool.
Cool.
Was
Um,
that with the writers, how much how dictatorial does that get? For example, do they do some
Good question.
like a rudimentary storyboard kind of pre-drawing that they're, or is it just
Uh-uh.
like text that they say this needs to happen, then this needs to happen?
It depends who you're working with, sometimes on the actual writer, but mostly on the company. So Marvel would do comics the Marvel way. And basically you would get a plot, and it would say pages 1 through 5, fight scene with Wolverine and Colossus. And then they would go, they're angry about such and such.
Yes, Mike with his
Oh, I
one.
have that book too. I just bought that for my son like 2 months ago.
It's a
It's
classic. Yeah,
legit.
yeah. Sorry, it's a
Legit.
running joke on the podcast. I always have the book on my
Yeah,
shelf, so I
he's
just
got
had
the
to
magic
lean
book.
into
It's
it. I apologize.
legitimately, if you want to draw, you know, anatomy, foreshortening, perspective, that's a legitimately good book. Like to this
Mm.
day, that's the #1
Holds
book
up.
I would buy for someone that wants to do that. But what was I saying about the
The nature of what they're
oh,
feeding you. Yeah.
There's different studios have a house
Marvel would
style. Yeah.
say pages 1 through 5 give you a plot, pages 6 through 8, and they would just plot the whole book out. That's why Marvel books are all one huge fight scene with people talking, like
Right.
they're fighting, and it's just exposition the whole time. It makes no sense really. And the way DC, this is back in the day, by the way, I haven't worked in comics for years. Back in the day, DC would give you a full script. Page 1, panel 1, you'd know how many panels are in a page. You would know exactly what's being said in each panel. So you could then gauge, oh, this one needs big word balloons. I'm going to put a small head at the, whatever. Totally
Right.
different ways of doing it. DC was more writing focused. Marvel was more over the top splash page
So
combat.
as an example of, one of the things I was always fascinated by when I was reading comics growing up, which I read a bunch, mostly X-Men, and part of the X-Men sort of
I used to
ecosystem
love X-Men. Yeah.
was the you would have, like the close-up shot, like you said, a very dialogue heavy panel where it's almost like their faces, like a two-shot in a movie. And then the next one might have just as much dialogue, but it's this massive vista with the tiny little person. And it's the idea that, reminding you that this conversation is taking place in a location and
Sure.
what they're looking at. And is that totally subjectively to the whims of the you in that case? Or is there the equivalent of a director?
If it's Marvel, a lot of times it's the penciler. Pencilers know how to storyboard. We know how to tell a story. We know how to do a close up, then a far shot. You want to set the stage with, a shot like you're talking about there. So a lot of that is usually the penciler. It's funny because I've gotten to know Joe Madureira, who is a bigger name than me in comics, but we do a lot of traveling because he works with a game called Airship Syndicate. So we always travel together. We have the same agents, and we just recently at GDC, also we were talking about that for a long time. And he was like, "Oh man, I met with Rob Liefeld. Say what you want about Rob, but I'll get back to this.
Just keep going. Ignore her. She's
keep going.
Okay.
Alana's irrelevant to the process.
I'll finish this one story, Alana. So he was like, to say what you want about Rob Liefeld. He blew the doors off comics for a long time, and he gave me some of the best advice I've ever heard. He goes, I got into comics, and Rob was looking at my pages. He goes, you spend so much time on each shot, and each shot is great, but they're just pretty normal. He goes, what you want to do is take one shot per page and kill it, like make it high action, in your face, really cool, and don't worry about the rest. And Joe Mad was like, okay, good point. And he kind of leaned into that. And of course, Joe Mad is, he's very good at that Marvel style of big in your face, splash pagey, stuff.
It's interesting you draw that line, because I was, when you were talking, I was thinking about, I guess the only comic script I've ever read, which is some of Alan Moore's stuff, which is very prescriptive. But of course, he was mostly a DC, right? So that makes sense that was the
Yeah, I work with Grant Morrison and them as well, and they were very. You knew exactly what they wanted, and don't f around. Don't think you're like, oh, I'm a penciler, I'm going to go off and do whatever.
We're learning about how comic art works.
I have a very embarrassing Joe Mad story. I was maybe 15 or something, and I was obsessed with Battle Chasers, which is his comic book series.
Oh yeah.
And so one of my first tweets ever was me saying that I thought that Joe Mad was hot. And then I met him, and I guess somebody shared the tweet with him. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that I had said that thing when I was a literal teenager.
Alana, I don't...
5, maybe? It was enough. No, it would have been longer than that, 7.
So
enough that I didn't remember saying it.
He's a pretty attractive guy. He's
a handsome guy.
I don't think my concern is the factual veracity of what she's saying.
Yeah, I mean, you were you just said something that was accurate. It's no shame in that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is a funny subtext though, Mike. The idea that Alana's like, yeah, it was super embarrassing because he's not even hot.
Yeah, he was. I may have been totally mid.
It was a dishonest tweet, and I won't do those.
He's handsome and very nice. Sorry, did he do art for Towerborn?
No, he didn't. His name came up because we were talking about comics, and then we started talking about how are scripts made, and then we were talking about the Marvel style, and just hit me just a few weeks ago. He told me the story about meeting Rob Liefeld, and Rob Liefeld gave him really good advice. And he's like, "Man, I started following it, and it's good advice."
The broader.
I just say you've taken to the format of this podcast where we ramble in ridiculous directions.
I know, I love it.
Quicker than most people. Most people are sat there going, "Sorry, what are we?" You're actually leading the charge on the.
I actually feel very
side.
comforted to have dropped in with you guys talking about something unrelated. That makes me feel like you guys really have it down, even when I'm not here.
In Arnie's defense, I specifically asked him about his pre-game industry career.
Yeah. Oh, you're trying to take credit for his success.
I'm saying Arnie's being very on topic, very diligent. He's actually being better than us at staying. He's threading the needle because
I was better, worse.
He worked in comics
give a very
before.
high end. Yeah. This will take me one breath and I'll get through it and then hand it off to Mike. And it's like now we're 5 minutes in and I haven't even gotten to my gaming.
I know, I love it. So
that's great.
So Alana, TLDR, he worked in comics before
games.
Today, before games.
Yes, okay, cool.
And then I just got to a certain point where to me, I figured out to me, this was a win. I did the thing, which is get to the the number one book that DC had, Justice League America.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what do I do now? And it just so happened that at that time, Ion Storm was looking to start up a comic division. So they called me up and I was like, oh, I've always loved games. This might be a segue into. So anyway, they took me out within a month. The comics division bailed, but they kept me on as a concept artist. Then I went to Retro as lead concept artist and then head production designer at Sony. So it kind of just went from there. And eventually I worked at BioWare. And again, I was there for a while and I was the lead concept artist and they were talking about, okay, you could be art director next. And I was going, I've seen how this works. It's very political. I don't want to do that. So I didn't know where else to go. And then I found some good friends at BioWare, two guys I knew. And I was like, hey, let's start a company. And that's what we did. Yeah.
Nice.
And you had the incredible good timing of launching a Kickstarter right when that was like the hot thing and every Kickstarter was making money hand over fist.
And do you know why we did that at that time? Is because the iPad came out and I was looking at the children's books on the iPad and I was like, oh my gosh, look, you click the berries and they explode. I was buying them for my kids. And then I got Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery. I always love plugging this game. Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery to me melted my mind. And I go, we could do a small game for the iPad with a few people. We don't need 600 like we had at the BioWare. So I go, let's start our own company. It was supposed to be like an iPad small game. And then Kickstarter blew it out of the water. We hired Austin. And then we had too much money to actually like get rid of. So we had to make it bigger. The whole thing just modified from there.
Great problem to have.
It was. You want me to tell you about that problem though? I'll never do it again.
Their
yes.
Kickstarter stories are pretty amazing.
I will never do it again because what we did is we promised the Kickstarter people, we're not keeping a penny of this ourselves. It's all going into the game. Well, deploying $723,000 takes much longer than making a small game. Like you get it, Mike. Now we have to deploy all this money correctly, right? So now we're living on our own savings for years and we're not touching a dime of the money that was given to us from Kickstarter. So I ran through all my savings at the age of 42. I maxed out 2 credit cards and I borrowed $35,000 from my dad. I was in so much debt when we launched Banner Saga. It was brutal.
Damn.
And
that's how all these stories go, right? Where it's like, it's either the greatest success story, we believed in ourselves and we did it, or it's the story of how I fucked my entire life.
I mean,
I also love, so I
options.
kind of moved companies and was a concept artist and then they offered me a director job. Like I love how real that is, that like a lot of people do kind of just casually stumble into the things that they end up really
I will
loving.
say comic book artist is my favorite cheat code for finding good, fast concept artists. I need very few directors to realize how good an angle that is, because you can get amazing concept artists that way. People who are used to working on a deadline.
You know how you get like a concept artist is like, okay, we need a new character, and they're like, I could give you a shot by the end of the day, or by the end of this week, I'll have a few. It's like concept artists. On JLA, you're doing 6 panels, oftentimes with 8 characters per panel and backgrounds per day. Yep. It's insane.
It's ridiculous. We did it recently on a thing, and we were sending out tests to a bunch of artists, and I remember there were a couple of comic book artists in there, and they just delivered 5 times the work that anyone else did for like a day's work. It was just it's what you're trained for and used to. And there's obviously trade-offs to that in terms of, like, as you said, like not every picture is going to absolutely sing because you've got to hit that deadline, you've got to hit that mark. But it's amazing to see, and for iteration and the kind of concept art is designed to be useful rather than to be in the art book. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. It also gives me
interesting point, actually.
It also makes me appreciate through a new lens. One of the things that was cool about the Banner Saga, it leaned so heavily on its art style, and its art style leaned so heavily on Arnie just physically doing it. It was one of those, like, you built a game that didn't have this Achilles heel of some person you hoped to go find to be able to deliver. It had this very striking approach but in hindsight, it's interesting. I never really appreciated until this conversation the extent to which that gristmill comics training, because the thing that game was it required such insane amounts of labor from you particularly to draw. It was
volume.
Yeah. Just there was so much, and there was no like path. There was no shortcut. It was just tons of these really detailed backgrounds, tons of character portraits, tons of all the rotoscoping, animation that they filmed themselves in their backyards, like swinging the axes and all this stuff.
But you're right. I mean, from comics, what you're learning is I have to get this much done this week. I have to get this world travel done. You have to. That's it. And whether it came out your best piece ever or not, you're done, right? So half of those portraits I did, I wanted to redraw, but I didn't. I did 2 portraits a day, you know, and that was it. They're
I think
in the
that
game.
also,
I don't care if I would want to redraw them. I don't have time.
it also shows why you guys and Stoic are an interesting case study. That era, like Tim Schafer kind of exploded Kickstarter with the Double Fine Adventure, and that dropped like a month before you guys launched yours.
And so so many people in, you know,
it was this crazy good luck. Yeah. But obviously flash forward a couple years, a lot of those studios either really under-delivered the game they promised, or they just straight up didn't deliver at all. And everything you're describing highlights why it's not a big shock, especially in hindsight, that you guys, you never even came close, at least from my point of view, you never came close to not delivering the game.
It was easy. It was easy, right? No problems at all along the road.
It was definitely not easy, but like
it basically fell out of your computer. Yeah,
they were very disciplined. You know, they really stuck to the schedule.
But it's something. It's advice I give to like people starting out now, especially is like if you look at a lot of the indie success stories and a lot of things that have gone well, they are the ones that are rooted in something that the people, either the person in charge or someone on that kind of senior group of people can do very quickly and cheaply. Like our games, I'm a writer, so I know I can write. For me, it's like thousands of words a day, and it'll hit an okay standard. And you know, if I take a bit longer, it'll be better. But that means so many times we've written our way out of a situation where, like, it was a game we were stuck between projects and we needed to get something out the door in 4 months. So we just made a visual novel because there was an artist and there was a writer. So cool, get that done. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's
make
the thing
game
that
you can with the tools you have for sure. Like I feel that way even about Layers Deep, right? It was like we have an animator.
There you go.
Worked in animation, so that's clearly like a very big part of the.
That's the trunk of your game you're making, and you add other stuff to it, and you make that. But fundamentally, at an indie scale, when you're talking about a few people, you need to lean into what you're good and fast at. Like, and I think sometimes indies don't. I feel like some indies sometimes they'll start out and they'll want to make something that's completely fresh and new to them and something where their skills aren't because it's more exciting and interesting to learn a new skill. And I'm kind of often the voice kind of in the corner saying like, just, you're really good at this though. Why don't you kind of start there and build out from there kind of thing?
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, Arnie. One is...
Who are you?
The easy... Who are you and what are you doing here?
I'm not done telling my story.
Yeah, that too. I know. We'll get there. Sorry.
No, I am done.
Number one was the $700,000 on Kickstarter, when you say it was all going towards the game. In my head, that includes salaries. To you, for what you said that does not include salaries, then what did you spend that money on?
We didn't take salaries. Austin Wintory took it all.
No, actually, $700,000 a video game, Austin?
Do you know how much a live orchestra costs nowadays?
It's actually a story. I can be super transparent about that because I tell that story all the time. But
we'll start with Austin, then I'll fill in the rest.
Well, I didn't mean to hijack it.
No. I think this is what this is.
I mean, they gave me like well into 6 figures. It was like a third the budget of the game for music, and a part of it was an aesthetic choice because it's a game it's methodically paced, where sound design is relatively understated. But even when it's big, it's a turn-based strategy game or a traveling kind of Oregon Trail style game, both of which lend themselves to a kind of less is more sound design approach, where music, and there's no voiceover. They had only a few little lines at key points, but it's basically text based storytelling. And so the music was in this position to do a large part of the lifting emotionally. Yeah. Yep. So they were keen to invest in it. Just like it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't that it was like, oh, you know, let's throw it at you because you're special. It was like the game will have a huge hole otherwise, basically, I think. Mm-hmm. But then the other aspect was that I said to them, look, you know, games like this tend to be very musically inefficient, linear, narratively driven games. It's not a system game. It's not Overwatch or something where you're jumping in and you can potentially kind of reuse assets a lot because there's an intrinsically repetitive structure to the game. Like constantly new environments, new situations, new stakes this battle is intrinsically more consequential than that one because of the characters involved. So it calls for lots of bespoke music. So you need a bunch. And I remember we landed on this idea of recording essentially like a college wind band for the score. Like I wanted something that felt kind of like a funeral procession type ensemble. No, it's sort of orchestral adjacent, but there's no strings, which gives it a very different quality. And I said, you know, they were like, we can put hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. And I said, you know, the funny thing is we're in a weird, awkward middle territory where if I pay myself a salary, if I go, okay, I'm going to take a fee for scoring your game, there's sort of not enough to handle all the bespoke needs of the game. But it's also not so small that you shift gears into that kind of scrappy indie mode where you go, how do we pull a mountain out of a molehill? And you get into this other mindset, which I love. I love working that way as well. I said, this game deserves a kind of grand emotional statement with a big sound, but we sort of can't afford it unless I put myself in the same boat as them. And so that's one of the things where I really connected with them on our very first call, that these were three guys betting on their dreams. They all had mortgages and families, and this Kickstarter was like the key, this ticket they were punching as a just roll of the dice on their future. And I said, I don't want to be in a different boat than that. So we worked out a deal, you know, where it basically created a long-term revenue stream for me on the game, like a kind of a profit participation, which composers are not so frequently invited into. And I said, because of that, now we're making this game from the same premise. So every dime that they put of these, like literal, like a third of their 700,000, it was like close to 200K. I spent every dime of it. I didn't keep $1. It all went into the recording sessions because I was like, now with that kind of budget, you really can swing big and hit all the bespoke needs of the game.
And of course,
truly
in
have
retrospect,
no concept of how much certain things cost. I just have no concept of how much recording stuff of a video game costs. I have no idea. Yeah.
Expensive.
But I mean, obviously, in retrospect, now we all know Austin killed it. I was making some faces when Austin was talking. He's like, they didn't just throw it at me. I was like, yeah, we kind of did. When we first started, we probably had 120 different composers send us their demos, and I would go through them, and then I would collect the 10 best and have Alex and John, the other two people, listen to them, and it was like a whole process. And at some point, somebody told Alex, like, wait a minute, you guys should stop. If you could have any composer in the world, just reach out to them. And we were like, okay. And we were playing Journey. So Austin Wintory. And within like half an hour, I think he called us back. It was awesome. And that's how we got to Austin. And we've been working with him ever since, of course.
Ironically, those 120 emails you received were all from pseudonyms of Austin.
That's
how she was making it.
The best part
that a lot of them he knew. He's like, oh, I know that guy. I know that guy. You know.
Yeah.
The best part that he's leaving out is that prior to their Kickstarter going bananas, the assumption was that Arnie was going to write the score himself.
Oh, if you watch the Kickstarter, that's me. That's my music.
The like pitch video, the initial video that was there when they launched the Kickstarter, the very first sort of here's our game we want to make, has this like brooding electronic thing in it.
That's GarageBand right there.
Yeah.
And I've never done GarageBand. I was going to do all the music for the game. Like that's what we were thinking the game would be.
Because the original pitch was 100 grand, I think, right? It was okay, 100K Kickstarter.
No, originally we were going to ask for 10 grand on Kickstarter. A day before we launched the Kickstarter, we changed it to 100.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Wow.
No, we just...
So basically you made way more money than you expected. That's the reason you went with the composer of your dreams, basically.
Way more. That's right.
Gotcha.
You guys hit like 300K.
We were hoping for 20 grand initially.
Didn't you hit
on the first day?
First day?
No, the first day before the first day ended, we hit our 100K mark, and that just kept going. It was crazy.
So cool. But so yeah, what did the rest of the money go towards? What do you spend that on if not salaries?
So we reached out to Austin. We're like, well, we have all this money. What are we going to do? We reached out to Austin. We got Kapow Audio to do the audio. We hired
sound designers.
Yep. Instead of Alex doing all the animations, we had Powerhouse Studios here in Austin do the animations, and then we added cinematics through Powerhouse Studios. Gotcha. And Powerhouse gave us a really good deal as well. They're really, really good dudes. They gave us a good deal as well. But, cinematics and animations just cost money. Those are the big ones. When we first started...
A little bit of VO in Iceland as well.
Oh, we did. That's right. Studio Searland in Iceland and all the VO. And we reached out to Iceland because Iceland was the most closely associated to the Old Norse language. So we were like, okay, cool, let's just do Icelandic.
So
And
cool.
then when we first started, we actually had some tech help in-house. We had a little bit of QA because we put out a multiplayer version of the combat called Banner Saga Faction, so players could help us balance the game. And then we made zero money on that, had to let everybody go. And then we developed Banner Saga 1 with just the 3 original of us. So
Very
all that was
cool.
deploying money. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Austin, you've spoken like about how incredible the process of working on the Banner Saga was. Like, I feel like it's like a defining part of your career with the amount that you talk
heaven.
about it. But it's just such a unique perspective that you had too much money and you were like, well, why don't we do exactly what we want to with it? Which
That
is
was great.
that's fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
It
And
was
like,
it was the most wonderful development ever. I mean, yeah, it's scary because we're so in debt, but it was so fun. We just could deploy
Yeah.
stuff on whatever we wanted. And Austin was great because we had too much to do. I had to concentrate on the art, some of the design. Alex was writing the game. John was doing all the time. We didn't have time to sit there and go back and forth with some composer about this little note right here. So we found out very quickly, Austin's like autonomous. You just say, this is what we need, go. And I tell Xbox when we were working with Austin, I go, if there's one thing you don't have to worry about on this development on Towerborn, it's Austin. Just let it go. Stop. Don't worry about it. He'll get it done on time. It's going to be awesome.
Do you find it a little unnerving? Let's talk about this.
Austin
this is now
an extremely reliable person.
This is something to talk about as two folks who've worked with Austin on soundtracks.
Right.
We can.
5
This
years
is therapy
also
now,
on this podcast.
and 5 years on this podcast. Do you find it unnerving how professional Austin is? I found it when I was working with Austin.
Bizarre.
I feel like
I'm very used to having to check in on people more.
Yeah,
Austin would just get stuff done. I
Yeah.
would just be like, "Do you need more from me? Do you need me to? Do you want to jump on a call? No, I've got it. I'm sorted. And
I think
and then
he may
turns
be
in
the
an
only
amazing
one of us
soundtrack.
on this podcast who's never been like, sorry, not feeling great. I don't think that's ever happened. I think Austin will, even
Right.
if he
No,
had
he's
COVID,
always.
he'd show
I'm in
up.
Prague. That's the,
No,
Yeah,
it's-
he's like,
it is-
sorry, I'm playing Journey in
To your
Red.
point, Mike, I mean, it's Austin reaches out to me. I don't go like, hey, Austin, where's, there's such and such, you got those cues ready because it's June and we need, it's not like that. I just figure he's got it. Let me guys, can I share my screen real quick or no?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Sure.
think so.
Let me share this.
Will it?
Oh,
Check your
host
tabs
disable
first,
participation.
Hold on.
Yeah, go
If
for
I
it.
make you the host in order to do that, will it screw up the recording?
We'll find out.
Yeah, it might.
Don't worry about it then. I was actually going to share with you something that's like 5 years old now. I did a Miro for a North Star for Towerborn.
Send me the link
North
and I
Star.
can open it. I can probably screen share from my side since I'm the host.
Yeah, let me send it over. It's worth checking out because this is how we work with Austin.
I will say I used to joke, like Banner Saga, there's 3 games, each with like 2 hours of music. So, it's 6 hours-ish plus or minus of music across the 3 games. And 99% of those are version 1. And when they're not, it's usually because I got unsatisfied and I changed something.
Yeah.
I always used to kind of get self-conscious about that, where I would say, they'd go, great. I always try to explain the dynamic where I would say Arnie and John and Alex made me head of the music department, and the composer's job was to make me as head of the department happy. And it just so happened that I'm also the composer though. So as long as I signed off on it, because I would always say to Arnie, are you cool with this? And he'd go, look, if you feel good about it, we trust you. And it starts, that's actually way scarier because you realize if this sucks,
It's your fault.
I can't blame them for a bad direction. This is
But
super.
But it goes the other way as
fault.
well. I remember when we were doing stuff, I remember like your first take is so good that it made me feel like I wasn't being enough of a director because I didn't really have notes. Like I would listen to something you sent me and I'd be like, I probably should have an opinion on this beyond this is great, we should put it in the game. But it was
you feel like you
people
should.
who do that
You
suck.
should, yeah.
People who do that suck.
Thank
like
you.
creatives who
Of
are like, let me
course.
have a note just to feel like I have something to say.
And that's why I
nightmares
just
to work
sent
with.
needs more flute back to him on every single track he sent.
Look,
More cowbell.
Sorry, more cowbell. There you go.
Picture me coming from GarageBand doing one song for Kickstarter.
Sure.
How am I going to tell Austin Wintory how to make this better? Hey, dude, those
Dude,
horn
a lot of
section,
people-
back it off a little bit. What? No, I know a lot
Austin's
of
like,
people do,
yeah, that's the appropriate amount of
but this
respect.
is the
That's all I
part about
demand,
game
yeah.
dev that I don't like. So and I think we're going to all agree here. How many times have you seen maybe a concept of something that's like wicked cool? You put it in front of 10 people, all of a sudden somebody nitpicks the nose. Somebody, before you know it, you've rubbed off all the rough edges and
Yeah.
you come down with something that is so lame. By
It's
the end of
erosion. Yeah.
I hate seeing 12 people at a meeting pointing at one thing and everyone's talking about it. I'm going, stop. Just, like your first gut instinct on something, is this cool or not? If you go, yeah, that's cool, just leave it, move on.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why directors exist, in my opinion. It's not to have the best idea, but to have a consistent idea and really believe in it and go for it. Like that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah,
the
and
thing
to
about
trust
Austin,
the people you've hired can execute on their department correctly, right?
Of course,
hire good
of course.
people and let them do it.
That
Let the
does
horses
90% of the
run.
work for you. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But like, if Austin can actually show this, I'm not sure he can. But
Yeah, I got it here.
Like, we talk about these things, and then Austin goes off and he kills it. Like,
Hmm.
if for some reason Austin came back and I'm like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a sad scene, and why is it happy? Okay, that would be a problem. But
Dark Crystal's a solid reference to work from as well.
So yeah, everybody, right now you're looking at Miro. We also use Miro and Layers Deep. That was one of the first things I did when I joined the team was make a Miro board. Game devs use this all the time. Mike, do you guys use Miro?
I was just thinking, can I get a tutorial? I've not even heard of Miro.
It's
Do I
like
need
a
to go on
series of
Miro?
whiteboards. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
You
so
don't need
good
a
for
tutorial.
organizing ideas. It's incredible.
It's the
Very,
best.
very helpful.
So yeah,
You don't need a
Okay.
tutorial.
like you said,
You'll
this
see.
is like
You jump in,
5
it just
years
works.
old, I think.
No,
This is
I know
5.
we're terrible. We're like Slack and Confluence. We are not with it enough.
If
And
you're doing
Miro's
design
whiteboards.
stuff,
It's just digital whiteboards.
that's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can
It's
see
so
Arnie's. It's
Using the
shared
Sony.
also. You can see Arnie's mouse there. Like
Yeah, so you can live
it's a
see
shared
what people are
workspace.
doing on the whiteboards. Miro fucking rules, dude.
It looks great. Yeah,
It's
no, it
the
looks really
best.
cool.
So you can see here, yeah. I mean, like overall, we want to go with a Dark Crystal kind of vibe, and immediately Austin was like, "Oh, all right, we're starting in the right area because that's cool." And then of course we have the North Star, the main theme: sweeping mystery, optimism, grand adventure, social areas, uplifting, shelter, safety. Then you can go to campfire covers. So basically, all I'm saying here is, here's the basic
this is even
ideas.
iterated on a little bit because the whole concept of our serendipity system
Yeah.
was this like a good
No,
probably 2
wait a minute.
years worth of iteration.
No, all I did was rename the serendipity. This bottom part we had very early on.
You're right. You're right.
And
you're right.
basically, serendipity was just what we already wanted to do, which is why I loved the idea of serendipity systems so much. I was like, this is it. Let's go,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
But
this
I
is a
went back
quote
into-
from one of our Zoom calls. I think I said the music will rise and fall and is hopefully compelling.
Yeah, probably.
And
Worked out okay for you, I
Fingers
think.
crossed.
because yeah, the idea that we had just as a little, cause so like we haven't even really talked about Towerborn yet, but obviously, well, why don't you explain the game? Give your pitch on the game because it's so different from, we spent like 7 years or whatever doing the Banner Saga, which is a
Yeah.
very specific kind of game, and even though they share this very visually like gorgeous aesthetic, even though one's obviously 3D and one's not, but they both traffic heavily on just how beautiful they are to look at, but they're super different games from each other
Yeah.
in every other way.
Well, we finished up Banner Saga and we were deciding what do we want to do next. And John and I came up with a bunch of pillars. But one of the pillars for this next game was, the joke is, and I say it in every interview, I think, Banner Saga was like a depression simulator. It was pretty dark. My kids didn't want to play it. It's slow paced. It had a slightly older crowd that liked reading and story and in-depth and slow pace. Anyway, so we pivoted from that to working on this game called Towerborn that we wanted to be, sweeping mystery, optimism, grand adventure, very hopeful, big, uplifting atmosphere. It was a very different vibe than Banner Saga. And I think that's one of the things, Austin, that you're like, awesome. I haven't done this before. Like, this sounds like a lot of fun.
Very few games are sort of like, I want to be unapologetically optimistic and joyous. There's always we want to do this, but it's the grim, grounded, or like there's so many games that it's just very in vogue to be kind of gritty and this idea that it's, and what I loved is that you struck this balance. We obviously talked a lot. You can see it on here on the board as well. The mention of Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, where hopeful and optimistic doesn't have to mean sort of naive or immature. It can still be very elegant.
Mononoke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The art style made me think of Ghibli so quickly. I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say about the art style, Arnie. But I love that in Towerborn, it feels like I'm looking at like several sheets of paper
Yeah,
stacked on top
yeah,
of each other. Like I don't know what the term for that is, but I love the depth of the art and the way that it
yeah.
really like it feels like an animation. I just it's I've never seen a game that looks like that. It's very pretty.
I think it's fantastic too, and I can say that because I didn't do it. The original of Towerborn was all 2D, just like Banner Saga. We had 2D puppeted characters. I did the art for the first like 3 biomes. It was all just hand painted 2D parallaxing, just like we did in Banner Saga. It was like our expertise coming in at Banner Saga. Eventually, we pivoted to 3D, and then the background layers become more and more 2D.
Oh, so this
Because
isn't multiplane 2D. This is actually a 3D environment, and you're just
Tower
creating that. Yeah, yeah,
Towerborn's
Towerborn.
it's straight up
Fully
3D.
3D. Huh.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah,
just looking at screenshots of it now. I see what Alana means. Like it
yeah,
looks. Part of it
So
is just the
stacked.
atmospheric perspective, but it
yeah.
just
Very
has that
cool.
feel of yeah. I know exactly
Yeah.
what you mean. Looks
And
great.
and I can talk it up because, as I said, like once we got over the initial, direction of it, I hired a really great art director in Pedro Toledo, who I worked with at BioWare, and then he hired, other great artists. We have Lisa Fleck doing all the environment, leading the environment. We have, really good artists on the team. So anyway, they took it over, and it's kind of as we add people, it's been modifying away from Ghibli in a cool way, because I'm going now, it feels more fully our own, which was always the goal, but we wanted to start with a stake in the sand of something to give people an idea. So we're at a really different place now, and it's not really due to me. I just love what the team is doing.
And it's such a cool thing to watch, right? You start with the idea and then you like let the artist
Yeah.
show you what it's going to look like. That was actually going to be my second question before we get back to your story was, as a person who has written stuff for concept artists, you're like maybe it's a page, maybe it's a paragraph, and I wrote that and then I get sent to a concept artist and they come back with concept art. When you are trying to make concept art for a team, what are you mostly thinking of? Like, are you thinking I'm trying to create a vibe? Like, what's the goal of a piece of concept art? I think is the most simple way to, like, I understand what I get from it, but when you're doing it, what are you thinking about?
Yeah. So when I was, head production designer, lead concept artist, or something like that at the other teams, on Banner Saga, it's very different. I did whatever I wanted to do.
Because you were doing it for yourself, right?
I was just doing,
Yeah.
this is cool, and I drop it in. That's it. It went through one person. But it's a really good question because, like Mike and Austin, when we were talking earlier about comic books, I was very used to, like, it's a system you're jumping into here. I'm not an artiste, I'm a drafts person. So Alana, I would go to the art director and I would try to understand. I think one of the things that's really valuable to a good concept artist that I got really good at, because I worked for editors in comics first and then came to games, is you have to sit there and really understand very quickly what that person is hoping for and then nail it. It's the hardest time is if you're working with a concept artist, they don't get it. They don't know what you're looking at. That's a problem. So my thinking is always, I'm trying to understand what whoever it needs to be, the character lead, the art director, the environment lead. I'm trying to understand what they're looking for. And then my next thought is, okay, how do I take what they're looking for and bring it into the world that we've been building? How do I fit that piece into what has already been done? Sometimes, and here's a weird thing. Now we're getting off track again a little bit though. What I always tell concept artists when they're coming up, or even when they've been here for a while, a lot of times in games or anything, you'll say like, hey, I need a chef, right? The chef is on this, area, and I'm going to go to him, and you get quests from the chef. It doesn't matter what it is. And that concept artist will give you the most badass chef you've ever seen. And they've got knives and bandoliers and a chef. It's the most badass. But what concept artists forget to do is you're building a world, right? Where does that chef fit into the overall? If you lose sight of the overall world that you're building, you're cooked. And unfortunately, when you give concepts to a lot of different, we had 17 concept artists at BioWare. When you give it to a lot of people and they're doing the best they can, but you said, I need a chef. Come on, I need a chef, not, what is this, some, Jedi chef, laser,
People get excited, right?
Bounty hunter. It's the best chef they've ever drawn,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm kind of getting off target, but these are the things I think about as a
too.
concept artist,
Very cool. Yeah, it's just an interesting one because I feel like it's such a unique job. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off there. Where do we get back on track at this point, you guys?
Well, I was something I wanted to insert about the pivot from Banner Saga into Towerborn that I have been repeating a lot as I've talked about the game the last couple weeks, that I love because I'm quoting Arnie, was as he said, he danced around it, but I just love this phrase where the Banner Saga were so depressing and adult. And the way I always explain it is we tend to make, if we're lucky, we make games that sort of reflect where we are in life. And so, obviously these guys having worked at BioWare and doing Star Wars and making other people's stuff, and also just, reaching a point in life where you're asking different questions, you're asking theoretically deeper, more existential questions. It makes sense that the Banner Saga would come out of that. As we round the bend, though, and all of them have young kids and they've kind of gotten that out of their system, the question is what next? And I'll never forget the very beginning. Arnie said, "I want to make a game," because I was thrown
Yeah.
by the beat 'em up. Was the surprise? I was like, it's very arcadey compared to like the depth of the Banner Saga. Of course, I was underestimating the depth of a brawler, but I remember it just struck me as a very surprising move. And he goes, "I want to make a game I can play with my kids." And it was
Yeah.
it was like, oh, so that's where you are in your life now relative to 10 years ago when we started the Banner Saga. Now that's a way bigger part of your diet. It makes total sense. And it also, it's like, I've done that. I've made my depression simulator. Can I make something that just celebrates joy and hope?
None of my kids played Banner Saga.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's
it's
calling me
totally
going,
true. That was a
he
valid
would
thing I said.
he would say, "My kids won't stop playing Tooth and Tail," which was the game I did
I
with
love it.
Andy after we did Monaco, and yeah, it made me laugh. And
Ivor listened to that. By the way, my son's name is Ivor. I also named a character in Banner Saga Ivor.
that's
The
awesome.
Tooth and Tail, he listened to that soundtrack. I don't know how many hundreds of hours. Like he was so into that soundtrack.
It's
What
so
you're saying is
beautiful.
you need to be giving Austin like parenting royalties now too.
Pretty much
It's one
at
of
this
those.
point.
I was just talking to a group of students earlier today, and they were asking, how do you build a career? And I said, look,
Get the
at the end of
kids in on board with your music,
yeah,
and
exactly. You
you'll
got to
work
make sure
forever.
that the
Yeah,
kids of the devs
That's
really
true
love
for
you.
YouTube, dude. Get the
I
kids.
totally.
I was talking a lot about Stoic, and I was saying, I said the more that you connect on a personal level with people, the more the work is the exciting, cool bonus. Because I said when I think about, particularly Arnie and John, two of the three co-founders of Stoic, who I've spent by far the most time with. I was like, these are people like if they called needing like if they're like, I was arrested, can you bail me out, can you pay my bail, I would pay their bail. You know what I mean? Like it's like it goes, yeah, feel free to just go nuts, I
Now I
got
know who
you.
to call. Now I know who to
And
call. I love it.
yeah, no, I no, we it's like we always make a point of, you know like I always say when we're at GDC, there's always one evening which is not for sale for meetings. Basically, it's like I will get dinner with these guys and it will go as long as it's going to go, and I will play the rest of my night by ear. I will not schedule it the way I schedule normal stuff. And like I remember the first Banner Saga we recorded in Texas. They were based in Austin. We recorded in Dallas. They drove up. They brought their my parents. This was right before my father died. He was able to come to one of my scoring sessions, which was
Oh,
the
that's
one and only
amazing.
time that ever
Lovely.
happened.
That's
And we
amazing.
got to share it with these guys. And like John brought his daughter, who was like this little girl who was so precocious and like asking all these questions. We all got dinner, and now I see her and she's like this young woman, and it's crazy. And
She's taller than me now.
yeah, to be part of people's life, where you're not just,
Yeah.
it's not just a gig. I don't just clock in and clock out. It's like
Right.
you care about each other, about each other. That's everything. That's what it's all about. But to me, that it's never about, it's not networking, it's not business cards. I will never not care about them. And to me, that was the Banner Saga was uniquely beautiful experience in that way, though.
It
Like I
was. It
remember
was
I
great
don't know about
development.
about
sorry, go
all of
ahead.
you guys for different disciplines, but I find it the easiest to write something when it is on a topic that makes me want to scream. And I don't mean negatively. I mean it's something I'm so passionate about that it's like a scream in my head. If that's
Right.
the thing that I get to write about, like whether it's
Scream from the rooftops.
I was trying to find a way to make a reference that doesn't break an NDA, but basically that was something that I was like not necessarily that interested in that I was assigned to write. And so I went and watched a bunch of documentaries that related to this thing to get myself like extremely into the thing because it was very pivotal. And then I was like, okay, I'm at a point where I want to scream about this. This is gonna be really easy to write now. I think like I can't even imagine working on something creatively that didn't give you that fire and delivering something that means anything to anyone. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's the easiest to make something if you're extremely passionate about it. Is the short of what I'm trying to say, really? Which sounds
I
like your
think
experience on both of these, Austin.
it will certainly come out better if you're into it.
For sure.
You know, the other way is just, well, it's a gig. I got to show up today, do my thing.
Which you have to
You
do
do the
too.
best you can, but
Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. I totally agree.
It's so cool
Yeah.
to see that evolve too, having been there, having joined the team at Stoic when it was basically just the three of them still,
Yeah.
to see the arc where this was a Kickstarter, and it's not like they were famous. It's not like Tim Schafer, he was famous. Of course, his Kickstarter exploded. Like there's just the concept was so compelling that it went nuts. And these three guys got to do the thing. And then now, like, what was the team size on Towerborn? To watch this evolution has been
We're at
unbelievable.
105 right now, but we have like 50 outsourced, so it's bigger. It's a
105
big
plus
game.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's a big game.
to
Can I
see
just
them.
as well just cut in to say I love it when developers credit the outsource size when they answer that question. I just want to highlight that, and it's very cool what you just did.
They're
and I'm just going
good.
to highlight it. No,
Our
but
outsource
it's
is
cool.
good.
The number of times I hear, especially at our smaller end of the industry, where a developer will be like, "Oh, we're a team of 20," and you're like, "You're not a team of 20. You're a team of 20
Plus,
wherever you're
plus 40.
based."
Yeah,
I won't
right.
tell the
Plus,
story,
yeah.
but that just happened to us tomorrow. Somebody's like, "Oh, the team is only this big," and then we're like, "Oh no, they're not. They're way bigger than that."
I respect it. No, genuine
people
kudos
don't
for
do that.
calling out. Sorry, I
Yeah.
threw us off track, but I'm
My
very
our
respectful when developers do that
the
because
outsource
it's
on our
actually
team.
totally.
We have them
Fuck yeah.
we have them integrated. I see what they're doing, and I'm
Fuck
calling them
yeah.
out by name. Holy cat, this guy's good, or this
I
girl
mean,
is
I'm an
Good.
good.
That's
outsourcer.
cool, man. That's
I'm
cool.
obviously like I've always been invited to they do these big stand-ups, you know, like show and tells at the end
Oh
of a
yeah.
sprint and stuff,
Yeah.
like any normal team. And it's like a Zoom call with 150 people on it, and I'm invited to that as you know, no differently
Oh,
than
that's
all these
cool.
and like the
Those are the
Slack
fun meetings,
stuff,
yeah.
and they've always I've never felt like an outsider, and it never looked like any of the other outsourcers were. It's just
No
so
way.
cool to see because
They're
it's
good.
like you were talking about the evolution to art director. Like you've had to learn delegation. Same with John and like where these people that were used to doing it themselves, like John was writing the code himself, and to have to
Yeah.
get into a position of directing other people. A lot of teams do not flourish when they make that pivot. They are not also because they don't like it as much. They want to do the thing. You said that yourself. But it's been so
Yeah.
cool to see.
I'll get
But I'm
back to it.
curious. I'm curious. Yeah, I don't doubt it. But I'm curious to hear you talk about that more if you're willing. Just that shift, how to even do that well or how to do that enjoyably, because you're in a
For
very different
me,
role now than you were on the previous ones.
extremely different role. And
You're
Banner
not even the
Saga,
art director.
I just
Like,
did the thing. No, I'm the chief creative officer. So, but it is a tough one. I don't know if Alana or Mike has gone through this, but when we're hiring up the team, I hired a really good art director that I knew and I worked with before. Okay, you're the art director now. Then I was still in the thick of it, you know, doing the biomes, doing art. And then we hire a lead environment artist who I'm trying to work with, but also feeding back to. And then we hire a lead character. So I'm still in the mix, right? I'm still doing my thing. I'm still handling it as if it's Banner Saga to a degree. And then I start realizing, oh wait, I missed the last 4 meetings because I'm doing other stuff. And now I'm here dropping bombs and flying out. Like, it's no way to run a team for me. I didn't want to be them when I was in that position. I didn't want to be a lead with some chief
But
creative
it sneaks
officer
up on you,
flying in.
doesn't it? It does
It
really
does.
sneak up on you.
I had to really make a concerted effort to go, I have to stop. So all I do is feed back to the art director now, go, and he can say like, yes, I think this is good. I'll go talk to her or whatever. Or I disagree with that. We could talk it out. I don't reach out directly to people much at all.
Well, you're doing them a
Unless
favor
I'm
as well
good.
because
Oh
you'll
yeah,
confuse matters if you do that, right? Yeah, no, I can
completely.
totally relate.
Yeah.
Like we went from me on my own to now 20 people, and we've never gone bigger than that. That's as big as we
Yeah.
really want to get. But yeah, no, the joke on our team is that basically like we've slowly replaced Mike's body parts with like new people.
Right.
Like it's like a cyborg situation.
It has to happen.
Slowly but surely, like different parts of what I did on the original games have been brought into other people, and it's good, and the work gets better because now you've got someone better than you at every job doing
That's
that
right.
job, right? Which is
They know it better than you. They're on it 100% of the time. You could only devote 20%. Maybe you can. I mean, you could be a really good stone carver and make amazing amazing art, you're not going to make a pyramid. Like,
Do you have a
need
little
lot of people to
thing-
make a pyramid.
This might
What's
be a
that?
me thing. I might be wrong. Do you have a little thing that you've kept hold of, even as things have got bigger? So for me, it's I'm my background originally is a graphic designer, so I still do a lot of RUI work and all that because I just
Yeah, cool.
it's at my happy place, so I won't be doing.
Yeah.
Do you have a similar thing? Do you have like an element of the game that you still kind of that's your little signature thing that even though other people are there, you're kind of keeping that little element for yourself? Or
No.
am I just selfish?
No, you're not selfish. I think it's a good idea. I moved into the realm of trying to offload from my leads management. So I was I took on a lot of management. The only thing I really
Right.
keep to now is there's a box that everyone's playing in the game I pitched. We can't go once we go outside that I say, whoa, 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 we're going too far here, right? That's about it though.
So you're
What
holding on to that. You're holding up the pillars basically. You
I
are
kind of
that
have to,
foundation.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if something collapses and the whole thing falls over, that's on me. I
If
let that
anything,
happen.
if anything, the answer to that question might be the music, because in terms of, I still pretty much worked directly with you, despite theoretically there were other people that could have been
Right.
like, the go-to. Alana's leaving us.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Please talk amongst yourselves, Arnie. I had a million questions. You're very interesting to listen to. I'm so sorry that I couldn't talk to you for longer. Come back
I'm so
anytime.
sorry. I was giving too long of an answer to
No,
each
you
one.
weren't. You're
That's
very
the pay
interesting to
watch
listen to.
listen style.
Come
Great,
back
Lana.
sometime.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry everyone. Bye.
Good to meet you.
No worries.
Bye.
See ya. I'm sure you have to go soon, Arnie. I know you're busy. Game having just launched yesterday.
I might have to go somewhere.
Now,
I might
Mike,
be
it's
busy.
your
I might
nighttime.
have plans.
You just
I
have
was going to end
bedtime.
with that, Austin. I have to do a shameless plug for our game that just launched yesterday before we end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I was just going to say, selfishly, even as I saw you delegating more and more, I never felt like I had to kind of like I would talk. I used to talk mostly to John on the technical stuff
Right.
because he was the be all end all of
He's
tech
hooking it, right?
in on the Banner Saga, and that was replaced by like obviously full service audio team and Xbox folks and stuff.
Mhm.
But I still felt like when it came to anything
And
creative,
Spidey.
yeah, oh yeah, no, I never spent more time one-on-ones with programmers than with Spidey on this one.
Dude's awesome.
Um,
That's weird because I was drinking from a Spider-Man mug as you said that, and it threw me off completely. There you go.
Yeah, I timed it perfectly.
but yeah, no, I felt like that you were still my principal kind of making
Yeah.
sure you felt happy. So in a way, you did retain
Yeah.
a direct connection. That would be the closest I would think to Mike's.
I agree with that, but I also think that you're the one doing the music. I'm not flying in giving feedback. You would send me big drops, and I'm like, dude, I love it. I mean, that's it. But
Sure, you are
again,
very
I
easy.
think but even with Austin, if something's going outside the box of what we agreed to, I would tell you. I would say, hey, these combats are supposed to be really scary, or remember the
Right.
tower's supposed to be inviting and welcoming. Why did you put that? I would do that. But when it comes to, hey, I think you're using too many horns or whatever, I would never do that. But the other thing that I like to do with Austin is just make sure that he's given all the creative freedom he needs to make it awesome. So if I'm the one that he's interfacing with, I am the one that defends it, right? So I can say, Austin, doesn't matter, do it. That's awesome, right? And now it's on me. So I like that because it gives Austin as much air cover as he needs to make something amazing.
Definitely an enabler. But I feel like I'm not the only beneficiary of that. I really felt like everyone, when I would show up to the group stand-ups and all the various sort of department heads and everybody were going around the room saying what they've worked on, everyone seemed to have that, like, I was told to go off and figure out how to make this happen, so here's how I made it happen. And there was not, everyone seemed always in really good spirits. It never felt like the team always felt like their individual slivers of the game felt like they really owned what they were doing.
That's the best case scenario. I think there's time periods where people do feel that way. Every now and you go through time periods where, as everybody knows in game development, it's really hard right now. How's morale? Not great, but not terrible, and then it gets really good. It's just kind of that way. This development was, it was a very, I don't want to say easy because it was a lot of work here and there, but this was not like 6 months of crunch. It was not, we didn't go through that period.
It really seemed like
So
Microsoft
I think
has
by and large,
supported this
people are happy.
game
Yeah.
in a way that really let it be what it needs to be. Obviously, I was not there, and I'm not inviting you to speak ill of our
No.
benefactor, but it didn't seem like there would be any dirty laundry really to air anyway. I mean, it really felt like
No.
this is a game that is being supported, and they will see it through, and show it
Yep.
the love that it needs, because it's a kind of novel. It's like a really, really, really high production value game for the kind
Oh,
of
it's a
genre it is.
we did a way bigger, way better game than we pitched for sure. I mean, this game is way bigger than we pitched. It was due to Microsoft feeling like, okay, we're going to double down on this. We're going to feel it. Like we feel that this is good. We're going to keep adding to it. What else could you guys do to make it bigger and better? So that was kind of the feedback that we've been getting up until this point. Anytime you work with a large publisher, right? Our game just launched. I'm not exactly certain of the internal KPIs that they're looking for to continue this game. We want to continue it for 10 years. I hope it's monetarily feasible enough to do that. We'd like to, and I'm hoping Microsoft really supports it through these early days until we really get our feet under us is the hope. Anytime you're working on a live game, it takes a little while to build up that group of that cohort.
I mean,
of players.
Fortnite
takes
was
patience
alive
for
for
sure.
years before it
And
became
trust, right.
Fortnite,
Mm.
right? I mean, that's
Right.
not uncommon. Very few. It's interesting.
Path of Exile. I mean, there's so many different games that now they're killing it after 7 years. They've been out longer than that, but it took them about 7 years to really start grinding on what they know their game is now.
It's not a live ops game, but I frequently point to Bastion also, where that game launched to no fanfare at all, and then there was like a Steam summer sale or something, and it was discounted, and a lot of people picked it up,
It's
and
amazing how that stuff works.
then it exploded.
It's amazing how that works. It's happened to quite a few games.
Yeah,
Sitting out for years and then boom.
But it seemed like I mean, look, yesterday was really exciting. I looked on
Yeah.
Twitch, and there were just like a gazillion people streaming
Yeah.
it, and a few of these streams had thousands of people watching.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
and this is a great game for that. It's because it's not like you watch a streamer and then the story is kind of all ruined for you, and then you think, oh well, I better really want to play this. I've never understood.
Like Banner Saga.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to, it always struck me as like a love-hate relationship with streamers if you're making a single player game like that, because obviously they help promote your game, but I don't understand. If I love watching a streamer, I've kind of gotten the game, right?
do.
Like,
But it's still like we have never had anything but massive benefit from having our stuff played
Isn't
on
it weird?
YouTube or streamed.
For
Like
sure,
I think as well, you might like that streamer, but you're gonna, when your friend says the next day, oh, I was thinking of picking up a game, and you say, well, I saw this really cool game actually, and it looked cool.
True.
I'm not going to play it because I watched the video, but like it's just it's amplified word of mouth, right? Basically, that's
where Banner Saga comes in as a single player game. Everyone's watching the story, but
yeah.
what if I chose that other decision? What if I chose this decision? And
I
they
bet
start
I could
going,
do that
"Oh,
better than that guy
I'm going to play it
did,"
myself." Right.
100%.
yeah, I mean, God knows
if there was
like,
no decision making, yeah, you just saw the story, but
God knows that was part of the premise with the musical Stray Gods. The idea was watching a streamer could theoretically be wildly different from you, because we want
That was
more...
absurd, though. The level of the level of responsiveness in that soundtrack was insane.
Yeah,
that was definitely.
As
but
in,
that was part of the
a
idea.
bad idea. No, I'm joking. It was good. It
No,
was
believe me, I have said those
fascinating.
exact words. I've said we inflict it was self-inflicted wounds in a pretty major way. This one, though, obviously invites so much player agency, and it's also just it's so fun forward. It's so much about just playing the game, that watching someone play, it's almost a cousin of an esport game in that way.
I think it's going to do very well with streamers. Yeah,
I certainly hope so. It was
Twitch,
really fun
YouTube.
watching those
Yeah.
yesterday and seeing the chat, like from people who had been playing the early access, watching people say, oh, like that's cool, like you're using that class differently than I had. Like it was cool to
Right.
see already bits of
Pick
that.
different skill trees. Right.
Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah, it was really nice to see.
So in case anybody's wondering what game we're talking about,
Yeah, where
it is.
can I play this game? And what
It's
is it?
called Towerborn.
Yes.
And right
Okay.
now, we just launched a Game Pass. If you have Game Pass, you can play it free. If you have an Xbox, you can still purchase the Founders Pack. And a few months from now, it's going to be full launch, free to play.
That's amazing, and they can
But
do
it's
that right now.
Towerborn. You go now. Go
And that's on
download
Series
it
S
now.
and X. It's coming now. It's out now. That's amazing.
It's on now. It's also on Steam. You
It's
got
also
Steam
in
Deck.
Steam.
Play it on the Steam Deck. Why not?
It's also
Can people wish list the paid for version? I guess you can just jump in and straight play right now, can't you?
You could jump in straight play right now. Yeah.
It is, and
What
and
amazing set of
anything you
opportunities you're
do
granting to
everything
the
you
audience there.
Right.
Such a gift you've given to the world. It's amazing. Yeah.
They also were very cool, very refreshingly transparent. They did this early access on Steam ahead of the Game Pass preview that launched yesterday, where they said, look, this is a paid early access for a game that will eventually be free to play. So we already know that the premise that we're asking for might raise eyebrows. And on top of that, we're going to be upfront about that we will wipe the servers and stuff once we go free to play. And I thought, like, people still, there were still people that were like, no, but I love Stoic. I loved the Banner Saga, whatever. I'm happy to join in because I want to help you fine tune it. And I just thought so many games would have made the mistake of not being upfront about that stuff. Because I know a lot of people that were like, oh, this game looks awesome, but I'll wait because I don't want my, like, I'll get addicted and I don't want my, I don't want my shit wiped. Like, I'm gonna put in like 50 hours.
And there's no more wipes. Since yesterday, you can play the game. You'll never get wiped.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's time to play. That's what I'm
time to play. Yeah. Hey guys, this was actually a lot of fun. Nice. I feel like we got through a third of what we probably could have.
I don't know how the show works, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the nature. This was actually, I would say, more having you here. Anytime we've had guests,
we're better behaved when we have guests.
We're on way better behavior, yeah. Because left to our own devices, it'd be like, hey guys, I want to talk about, like this, Expedition 33 or whatever, and then flash forward an hour later, and we've never discussed it. We got off into a discussion about like tax returns or something.
Been hearing insanely good things about Expedition 33. Our game director is saying it's game of the year for him already. Like,
this is my business partner said, played it for an hour and immediately messaged me. I was like, that's the game of the year. That's the one that's
and
the game of the year.
Isn't it like a really small team for
it's a team of 30. No.
Is it 30 plus 800 outsourcers?
No. I know the amount of money they spent on it, but I probably shouldn't say it. It's not a big team. However, they do have a lot of outsource from what I've heard.
Right.
You would have to. Like, it's a beautiful game.
And it's not even...
There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that.
Like,
not at all.
Oh, by the way, managing outsource is a real trick too. It's a skill. Like, it's not skill. Like it's just free. Like, you got to find the right people. You got to motivate them correctly. All of it.
I know it's a skill because I've fucked it up in the past. Like, I definitely, I can see the value in like someone who's very good at that is
and when you find when you find a good outsourcer that's really good at what they do, they're like worth gold. Like, these are really talented people now. They're not like, B team. They're good.
Oh, hell no. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will leave you gentlemen to your respective days then. Arnie, thanks so much for coming on, man.
I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, I really, it's fun to hear another perspective. Having you in my life in such a important way for the last like 15 years. It's really cool to hear all of it from another angle.
Is this like seeing your work friends talk to your friends from home, or is this like bringing someone home to meet the family kind of energy?
It's exactly like that.
Yeah. Just so you know, Austin, when we go to GDCs, we say we have to reserve one night for Austin. Like, it's not just from your.
When I go to GDC, I say specifically I do not want to spend more than an hour with Austin this GDC.
Actually, let's just be
Mike,
frank.
next time you should come along, man.
I'd love that.
I feel like Mike's attitude is prevailingly, do I have to go to GDC this year?
Yeah, I mean, I skipped it this year. I did skip it this year. Yeah,
it's a way
mainly because we're on a deadline. So I had to do the right thing.
Well, but anybody that has to travel over an ocean is forgiven being selective with their GDC attendance. I think so. All it's our privilege when you decide to show up. So
good luck with whatever you're working on, man. And
thanks. It's Tron Catalyst. I've heard it's the game that people should play after they've played your game. That's what I've heard. That's the chatter on the internet. There's two games I'm playing this year: Towerborn and Tron Catalyst. That's what the fans say. I'm just echoing what I've heard. They're already calling it the video game equivalent of Barbenheimer. That's what they're saying.
I love it.
Awesome.
Sold. All right, guys. Have a good one. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.